So, let's take a look at immigration narratives, media bias, and why independent research is so very important. I want to talk a little bit about the dueling narratives on both sides of the immigration debate, and how each group is using misleading language, imagery, and statistics to obscure the truth.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. The spectacle of illegal immigrants separated from their children at the border has ceased to be a news story in any traditional sense of the term. It is now an event, a kind of competition in which elites vie to see who can reach greater heights of rhetorical excess and self-righteous posturing. It is performance art, really. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi and even Hillary Clinton took an early lead in the contest by bypassing public policy questions entirely and moving straight to theology. Here are part of their sermons. Watch.
The hypocrisy of all people of faith in our country not to clamor for this, for what the administration is doing to end.
Those who selectively use the Bible to justify this cruelty are ignoring a central tenet of Christianity. Jesus said, "Suffer the little children unto me." He did not say, "Let the children suffer."
So the same people who support third-term post-viability abortion for purposes of sex selection are now lecturing you about God and sin and the holiness of children. Feel chastened? But wait, there's more. So much more. On Facebook, Senator Ben Sasse called the administration's policy wicked, as in immoral and devilish. Former First Lady Laura Bush likened it to the internment of the Japanese during World War II, a moral stain upon this nation. Former CIA Director Michael Hayden went all the way. He tweeted out a picture of Auschwitz, a death camp, and compared the U.S. government to the Nazis. After sobering up, Hayden walked that back a little bit on television, but not much. Watch.
I know we're not Nazi Germany, all right, but there is a commonality there. I've lived in Germany for 3 years, a more civilized people you cannot find.
But General...
And so I was trying to point out we need be careful not to move in that direction.
Oh, we could go on. There is so much more just like that. The rich and powerful reminding you just how virtuous they are. You think any of these people really care about family separation? If they did, they'd be worried about the collapse of the American family, which is measurable and real, but they're not worried about that. In fact, they welcome that collapse because strong families are an impediment to their political power. And that's why they're always lecturing you about the patriarchy and the evil of the nuclear family. Millions and millions of American kids are growing up with one parent at home, families separated, thanks to their policies, and that's fine with them. Many of those kids, by the way, have a parent behind bars. It's not just illegal immigrants who are separated from their children. The majority of American citizens in prison have minor kids they've left behind. Their families have been separated by force by our justice system because they committed a crime. So in that way, these kids are just like the kids you've been watching on television today. The difference, of course, is they're Americans, so nobody is spending $35 grand a year apiece to make sure they're okay. Democratic politicians and cable news anchors don't visit their foster homes to highlight their plight. They're ignored. This is one of those moments that tells you everything about our ruling class. They care far more about foreigners than about their own people. You probably suspected that already. The other thing you may have noticed is that they're not especially interested in solutions to anything. They're great at yelling and at preening, not so good at fixing and building. We could strengthen our borders to keep illegals out. We could fund more immigration courts to process those who sneak through anyway. We could even build more housing facilities at the border, holding facilities, to allow families to stay together while their asylum claims are processed. But the left is not interested in any of that. Their only solution is immediate amnesty for anyone who crosses our borders with a minor in tow. And of course, that's the same as no borders at all, not to mention a powerful incentive for child smuggling. They don't care. Because no matter what they tell you, this is not about helping children. A lot of people yelling at you on TV don't even have children, so don't for a second let them take the moral high ground. Their goal is to change your country forever, and they're succeeding, by the way. Since 2014, to name one example among many, at least 500,000 Central Americans who came here illegally have been released back inside our borders. Did anyone vote for that? And more to the point, who's going to pay for that? Not the people you've been watching on television today. Their kids go to private school if they have them. Their neighborhoods look exactly like they did in 1960. No demographic change at all, just like they like it. There's no cost to them. The cost is entirely on you. But don't complain, or else they will call you Hitler.
We'll start with Trump's recent attempt to reframe the discussion, and then move on to how the Democrats and certain media outlets are playing with falsehoods in their own way. I'll also split this video into 2 parts, in order to cover each side independently. So, here's the Donald.
We're gathered today to hear directly from the American victims of illegal immigration. You know, you hear the other side, you never hear this side. You don't know what's going on. These are the American citizens permanently separated from their loved ones. The word permanently being the word that you have to think about, permanently. They're not separated for a day or 2 days. These are permanently separated because they were killed by criminal illegal aliens. These are the families the media ignores. They don't talk about them. Very unfair. We have to look at everybody, but this is a very unfair situation. Our first duty and our highest loyalty is to the citizens of the United States. We want safety in our country. We want border security. We don't want people in our country that don't go through a process. We want people in our country based on merit, not based on a draw, where other countries put their absolute worst in a bin and they start drawing people. Where you think they're going to put their good ones. They don't put their good ones. They put their bad ones. And then when they commit crimes, we're so surprised. We'll not rest until our border is secure, our citizens are safe, and we finally end the immigration crisis once and for all. We want safety in our country. We want strong borders. We want people to come in, but we want them to come in the proper way.
It was pretty emotionally convincing, right? How could such tragic stories be ignored? Every conclusion that flows from this emotional plea has to be right. Right? Let's explore that.
But don't complain, or else they will call you Hitler.
President Trump has offered a number of statistics to back up his claims. According to Voice of America, AP has fact-checked his numbers. Trump. So here are just a few statistics on the human toll of illegal immigration. According to a 2011 government report, the arrests attached to the criminal alien population included an estimated 25,000 people for homicide, 42,000 for robbery, nearly 70,000 for sex offenses, and nearly 15,000 for kidnapping. In Texas alone, within the last 7 years, more than 250,000 criminal aliens have been arrested and charged with over 600 criminal offenses. You don't hear that. The facts. Trump is likely working from a 2011 U.S. Government Accountability Office report that looked at arrests, costs, and incarcerations of immigrants who are in the U.S. illegally. The statistics he cites are accurate. He doesn't note that about half of all of the 3 million arrests of the criminal alien population in the study were for immigration, 529,859, drugs, 504,043, or traffic offenses, 404,488. And some of the immigration arrests were related to civil violations, not criminal charges. The report didn't distinguish between the two. Trump. I always hear that. Oh no, the population's safer than the people that live in this country. You've heard that, fellas, right? You've heard that. I hear it so much. And I say, is that possible? The answer is, it's not true. You hear it like they're better people than what we have, than our citizens. It's not true. Is Trump right about all this? Well, the Cato Institute is a libertarian think tank headquartered in Washington, D.C. It was founded as the Charles Koch Foundation in 1974 by Ed Crane, Murray Rothbard, and Charles Koch, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of the conglomerate Koch Industries. Yes, that's Charles Koch of the Koch brothers' infamy. This right-wing think tank disagrees with Donald Trump's twisting of statistics. I've grabbed a couple of the pertinent charts from their study, but feel free to look up the entire document and fact-check everything I'm saying. This is the criminal conviction rate for Texas in 2015 by immigration status. In this case, natives just means people who were born in the U.S. Now remember, these are not the overall numbers of convictions, these are the rates per 100,000 people. So, for every 100,000 U.S.-born Americans in Texas, 1,794 are criminally convicted. Now take a look at the illegal immigrant numbers. Less than half. For every 100,000 illegal immigrants in Texas, 782 are criminally convicted. Legal immigrants, with only 262 convictions per 100,000 immigrants, seem to be the most law-abiding people in Texas. Okay, I get it. Those aren't the numbers of convictions for violent crimes. Sure, lots of citizens get booked for silly things like marijuana possession, vandalism, stealing chocolate bars, etc., right? When it comes to something more serious, like murder, the numbers have to back up what Trump is saying, right? Sorry, here are the homicide conviction rates for Texas in 2015. Same deal for 100,000 people in a particular subpopulation. Just take a look at it. Illegal immigrants are significantly less homicidal than their American-born counterparts. And yet, legal immigrants seem to take the sanctity of life much more seriously than either Americans or illegal immigrants. These conclusions are backed up by many different data sets from various parts of the country. Even the right-wingers who actually take the time to look at the data and come to the irrefutable conclusion that much of the rhetoric spoken by Republican politicians and certain media outlets, say Fox News, Breitbart, and media personalities like Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, and Alex Jones. Even they know it's just plain false. It's this sort of marketing that is the most dangerous. It caters to your preconceptions, pats you on the head, and says, "You've been right all along. All of your worst assumptions are true. Now stop thinking and go along with what we're saying." Surely, though, misleading the public for political gain is just a right-wing tactic. Or is it?
Because that's all they care about, what it looks like. It's deranged, it's abusive, it's cruel, it's evil, and the entire world is watching. It is now the time that he has gone too far. Question mark. Go.
I want to attach what you just said to the question and try to ask John about politicizing, and I could put an exclamation mark about everything you said, and it was particularly reprehensible when Ivanka said it looks a certain way. What has to happen now, this can no longer be about who Trump is. It has to be about who we are. If we are working towards November, we can no longer say Trump's the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you're the bad guy. If you vote for Trump, you are ripping children from parents' arms. The mistake that we've made in the past is look at that bad guy over there, look at that bad guy. What the Democrats have to do is make the next election a referendum on who Trump is, but who you are. And that's the big difference. You can no longer now as a voter, because it's now not about taxes, it's not even about some abstract term of immigration or nationalism. If you vote for Trump, then you, the voter, you, not Donald Trump, are standing at the border like Nazis going, you here, you here. And I think we now have to flip it. And it's a given, the evilness of Donald Trump. But if you vote, you can no longer separate yourself. You can't say, well, he's okay, but. And I think that gymnastics and I think that jujitsu has to happen.
The AP has just broken some new news. This has just come out from the Associated Press. This is incredible. Trump administration officials have been sending babies and other young children. Oh, hold on. To at least 3. Can we put up the graphic of this? Thank you. Do we have it? No. 3 tender age shelters in South Texas. Lawyers and medical providers. Just, I think I'm going to have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. Now it is time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, where he is live in Brownsville, Texas.
Journalist and filmmaker Jose Antonio Vargas tweeted an image of a crying child behind steel mesh, and it went viral. It was splattered all over TV screens, social media, and newspapers. All across the country, and internationally, people saw it on a daily basis. You would have to be living under a rock not to have seen this image, along with a headline to the effect of, "Children in cages. Trump policy separates children from parents and imprisons them." There's only one small problem. The image isn't real. Okay, maybe that's a bad way to phrase that. The child is real. The mesh the kid is standing behind is real. However, this cage, it was just a prop, and it was used as part of a performance put on as a protest against President Trump's new immigration policy. Even establishment-friendly fact-check website PolitiFact rated the tweet's presentation of the image as false. However, the coverage of the truth behind the photo was sparse at best, whereas the initial distribution, the initial flurry, was comprehensive and repeated continuously over a period of days. The consequence of this stilted coverage is pretty clear, and that is that most people will come away with the impression that this photograph is legitimate photographic documentation of federal policy in action. Another great example of misleading media coverage is the widespread and popularized Time magazine cover of Donald Trump staring down at a small crying girl, heavily implied to be a child victim of forced separation from her parents at the border. NPR has an interesting report that digs below the surface of the meme masquerading as news. In the image, a little girl wails in uncomprehending sadness and anxiety. Her face flushed, nearly as pink as her shirt and shoes, she stares up at her mother and a U.S. official, both too tall to be seen. The 2-year-old Honduran child's panic is so palpable, it's difficult for a viewer not to feel it too. Perhaps it's little wonder, then, that the photograph became linked with the controversy over a Trump administration policy that had, before the president walked it back Wednesday, separated more than 2,300 migrant children from their parents since early May. The image has traveled so widely and has become so recognizable, Time could pull her figure out of context and set it beside a looming Trump on the magazine's latest cover, rendering it a symbol of the reckoning after Trump's border separation policy. There's a complication, though. The little girl was not ultimately separated from her mother. According to her father, the man whom Reuters identified as Denis Valera has told multiple media outlets that mother and daughter were detained together while seeking asylum in Texas. Border Patrol agent Carlos Ruiz backed this account in an interview with CBS News. He said that when he encountered 32-year-old Sandra Maria Sanchez after her illegal crossing, he detained her for a proper search, but asked her to set her daughter down before doing so. So the kid immediately started crying as she set her down, Ruiz told the network. I personally went up to the mother and asked her, "Are you doing okay? Is the kid okay?" And she said, "Yes, she's tired and thirsty. It's 11 o'clock at night." They're using it to symbolize a policy, and that was not the case in this picture, he added. It took less than 2 minutes. As soon as the search was finished, she immediately picked the girl up, and the girl immediately stopped crying. So here are two extremely widely distributed memes that have strongly influenced the opinion and perception of reality of many people. Yet ultimately, the images and the accompanying messages were at best misleading, and at worst false. Better yet, Many politicians have opportunistically used the effects of these misrepresentations to their own benefit, both in terms of policy and in terms of electioneering for November. It appears that individuals, politicians, and media outlets on both sides of the aisle are equally willing to misrepresent reality to the public, and to capitalize on the effects of the beliefs generated by slimy issue marketing. We're all stuck in Plato's cave, listening to the most authoritative voice in the cave telling us what the shadows on the wall really are. Here's a short clip summarizing Plato's allegory of the cave, which I borrowed from the YouTube channel Wisecrack. I've included the link in the credits in the description of this video. I don't claim it as my own.
Imagine a group of people born into a cave, chained by their legs and necks facing the back wall. The only thing they can see are shadows cast by a fire behind them, and since they've never seen the actual objects, they think the shadows are real. But what would happen if one of the prisoners were to be set free? When he turns round and sees the objects, will he know that the shadows are a lesser copy of reality? And when he eventually leaves the cave and sees the sun and nature for the first time, would his mind not be completely blown? After experiencing a higher truth, what would happen if the prisoner returned to the cave? Plato muses that telling the others of the greater reality would threaten their narrow beliefs. If they could, they might even kill him.
As I said, most of us spend our whole lives trapped in the cave, staring at shadows. The ones who have seen the real world often don't know how to convey this new information to the folks still watching the light show. After all, many people might be shocked to hear that their chosen media outlets and politicians are manipulative. Many will even refuse outright to believe that the debunking of falsehoods is true, even if the retraction comes directly from the offending individual or publication. The falsehood about the 17 intelligence agencies confirming that Russia hacked the election is a good example of this. Even though the claim has been withdrawn by major media outlets, albeit very quietly, almost everybody out there still believes it to be true. Even many people who believe that Russia did not interfere in the election still believe that 17 intelligence agencies wrote the report. And yet, even the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, has said on national TV that this was inaccurate.
Additionally, I'll briefly address 4 related topics that have emerged since the ICA was produced. Because of both classification and some executive privilege strictures requested by the White House, there are limits to what I can discuss. And of course, my direct official knowledge of any of this stopped on 20 January when my term of office was happily over. As you know, the IC was a coordinated product from 3 agencies, CIA, NSA, and the FBI, not all 17 components of the intelligence community, those 3, under the aegis of my former office.
This inability to confront reality is a serious problem. What is to be done about these cognitive dissonances? Do we need to bring back the fairness doctrine that Reagan and a bipartisan congressional effort destroyed back in the 80s? Do we need more governmental regulation of news outlets to ensure that they are more honest? Well, that's one possible solution. And it does work to an extent, too. But there's always the legitimate argument, the legitimate question, that the people who oversee the enforcement of the rules can become corrupted. Who watches the watchmen? I personally think that there's a potential solution that is far more personal. It falls to each and every one of us to determine the truth for ourselves. How do we do this? Well, the first step is to keep an open mind and educate ourselves on every issue as much as humanly possible. This is a responsibility that falls on the shoulders of citizens in a democratic country. The second step is to apply a variation of the Socratic method and consult as many different outlets and perspectives as possible on each issue and event. This means watching even the news you disagree with, reading even the papers that frustrate you, and expanding your horizons beyond the border. International news often reports on things and gives perspectives that we almost never see at home. We have to leave the bubble of our echo chamber. We have to leave the bubble of our borders. And then we have to cross-reference everything we read and see to try and figure out what is actually true and what we really believe. We have to find our own truth, even if it doesn't line up with our preconceptions, even if it makes us spectacularly uncomfortable. This isn't an easy thing to do. It's a lot easier to receive the pat on the head or the pat on the back and soak in the affirmation that our preconceptions are correct. It's easy to outsource our critical thinking to talking heads on TV or clever turns of phrase on a piece of paper that make us feel good about ourselves. It's hard to dig in deep to the particulars of any given situation, especially when you're exhausted from working a long shift, going to school, taking care of your kids, cooking dinner, cleaning up after the dog, and so on. Our lives are crammed to the brim, even without politics. But as I said before, we have a duty as citizens of a democratic country, to be truly well informed about what is going on and why. If we fail in that duty, our entire country suffers as a result. So folks, please, do your own independent research. Find your own truth. If you enjoyed this production by The State of Opportunity, please like and subscribe. Remember, you're the ones who make this all possible. You can also check out our Facebook page at Opportunity State and follow us on Twitter at @OfByOpportunity. If you feel like chipping in a couple bucks, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/stateofopportunity. Have a great day, and remember to always keep an open mind.